this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united with his wife, and they will become one flesh. And the Hebrew word translated united means joined together very strongly, so that the two parts cannot be separated again. And interestingly enough, when it talks about a relationship in the Bible, this is the only time when it says that you will leave your father and mother and be joined. And that's in just the sanctification of marriage. So the best visual aid that we have, that we can do, is we're going to take two pieces of card, or two pieces of paper, and Teresa's glue sticking them together, and then she's going to put them together.
And so this would be like uniting each other.
There you go. And this is it. This is when we talk about how close. This is exactly what we're talking about, how close you're actually getting. That close. Each side is a different color, which shows that you are unique, but yet you're still joined together as one. So it's very key. It's the closest possible human relationship that's known to man. And some will say, okay, well, what about a parent and a child relationship? And that is still not as close a relationship as what God intended that a husband and wife have with one another. Marriage is, when we have children, one of the things that we strive for is to raise them up, encourage them, but encourage independence. We want them to do what? We want them to get out of the nest. We want them to get down the road and get on with their own life. So we spend all the time with our child getting them ready to go, but that's the complete opposite in a marriage. What you should be doing is spending the time growing closer together and becoming more, not independent, but interdependent upon one another. And there's a recent interview with a talk show host. He talked to a man and a woman who'd been married for 42 years. And the husband's comment was, Mary and I are so close. We have companionship, love, familiarity, all those things that make two people content in each other's company. When you've been together for as long as we have, you virtually become one. And that's really what marriage is all about. But that sort of togetherness doesn't come automatically. I know that it's taken Teresa and I, it's taken us a lot of time to get where we're at today, and where we probably should have been 22 years ago when we first got married. But it's really taken us a long time to do that. One of the things that we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through the 4 seasons of marriage, and really what takes place in those 4 seasons of marriage. And I know that some of you may not have experienced each season of that marriage. Teresa and I didn't experience each season of that marriage. We kind of skipped the spring season because I came in with a ready-made family. She had her 2 kids from a previous marriage, and that was okay. I mean, I was the oldest of many kids in my family, so that worked out all right for me. So
well, he was okay, but his buddies he went to school with thought he was nuts.
I
mean, we got married when he was in his junior year of college, and he decides to marry me with 2 kids, and people just thought he was crazy.
They still think I'm crazy, but anyway.
It's crazy about me, honey.
So in Teresa and I's case, we missed the spring season of marriage because we didn't have time just to spend with each other and getting to know each other. So we hit the ground running, so to say. But there's a book, and actually we'd hope to have that book here tonight, but we don't have it. But it's written by Gary Chapman, and the book's called, it's about the seasons of a marriage. And it truly is titled The 4 Seasons of Marriage by Gary Chapman. And we hope to have that as a giveaway tonight. Somehow it ended up not being in the bookstore. So. Well,
it's actually going to be a book we have up at the retreat. So that's where it's in the box at the retreat. So we will have it next week so that you guys can look at that.
So the first question I have for you, how many of you would say that you are in the spring season of your marriage? Any of you?
One.
Okay. Yeah, a few couples. Okay, wonderful. That spring season is marked by a sense of excitement and expectancy, and everything's new. It's a season when you're discovering things, and we don't always like what we discover. You get married, and you're thinking you've got everything pegged out. Well, this is how this is going to be, and that's how that's going to be, and you find out right away that isn't the way it works. That one of the things we were joking about as we were going through the remodel is in our living room, we had put our refrigerator and our range right next to the big screen TV. And the guys would come over and they'd joke. They'd say, well, oh, look how convenient that is. You can sit right on the couch and get a beer out of the refrigerator. And I'm like, yeah, right back to before I was married. And Teresa's not thinking that's funny at all. So anyway, you know, it's just those little things. It's realizing that, you know, honey, I don't make the bed because I want to get right back into the bed the way it was when I got out of the bed.
And I grew up with a mom who chased us with the vacuum cleaner. You know, everything was this, perfectly clean and stuff. So it's just all those little things that you really don't think about, you know. One of the big issues for me was, and, you know, my daughter, oldest daughter, will really attest to this. I used to come behind and clean up after everybody. You know, if you can't do it as good as I do, well, I'll let you do it, but I'm going to come back and redo it. So, you know, it's just working through all those things as you learn.
So it could have been, you know, the way you folded the laundry or which direction the toilet paper came off the roll or whatever. I mean, we know that the experiences when you're first married are quite different than what you expected. But the interesting thing that we need to realize that rather than trying to change each other, because we know that doesn't work, we learn to accept the differences and to really work through that. So the second season is summer. And that's kind of when the kids come along, and so that's where Teresa and I started. We started right in the summer months. Summer's more active. If you have young children, you feel that that's an understatement. And I know some of you here do have young children. In fact, one of our couples that's here tonight is repeating the course. They didn't take the whole course because they had to leave partway through the course to go have a baby. So, but they're back. But you're probably experiencing long-term sleep deprivation. You can hardly put one foot in front of the other. Coping with toddler tantrums, refusal to eat or go to sleep. I was sharing a story. Jake Wilkinson, one of our youth pastor that's just getting ready to move to Gunnison, his little daughter, who's 2-3 years old, she likes me to draw tattoos on her arms. So she comes at me with tattoos. Says, I want tattoos because I always have a pen with me. And I was sharing with one of our couples tonight, their little girl got in trouble the other day because she was drawing on herself. And I said, well, I could give her some tattoos. And her mom's like, you never do that. Promise me you'll never do that. I said, okay, I'll promise. So, but, you know, it's just that excitement that you go through. And we know that the summertime of the summer season of our marriage is very different. It's in that particular season, that's the season that you need to try and find the time to give to your marriage relationship. And it's not all about your kids. Truly, one of the best gifts that we can give to our children is a good marriage. And when they see the example of you having a good marriage, that is awesome for them. They feel safe. They know that if your marriage isn't being neglected, that they are going to be in a safe environment. There's a story we have about a couple who just had a baby, and it was a big change for them. It was their first child, and the wife all of a sudden went from, you know, being able to do her own thing to where she was, you know, day in and day out, she was taking care of the baby's needs, you know, cleaning, changing, feeding, cleaning, changing, feeding, you know, that never-ending process. And then when the dad would come home, he just poured all of his attention into their baby. And, you know, really, it's one of those things that we know we have to love our children, but not at the sacrifice of our marriage.
And, you know, when I go back and I look at our summer season of our life, you know, where I'm standing now, and some of you can relate to that, it just seems like it flew by, and it does, because you're so busy doing so many different things. But one of the things Lester and I did well during that season was we still made it a priority to date each other, to court each other, to make sure our kids knew the ultimate priority in our lives were each other. And a lot of that came from my background, from being divorced. I was raised very fundamental Christian. I mean, my whole life was a whole list of do's, not very many do's, a whole lot of don'ts. My life was motivated by fear. I was actually raised to believe that if I divorced, I would go to hell. So I had a really long spiritual struggle even through the first part of our marriage. And yet I knew, bottom line, I was never going to leave this man. And I wanted to make sure my kids knew that, and that they didn't have to go through what we went through when we had to go through a divorce. So the third season is autumn, and that's when we hit the teenage years. And, you know, I really, teenagers are a handful. I mean, those of us who have them or who've had them know that there are a lot of things they go through. Their hormones change. There's a lot of changes in their life. But you know what? We had some great times with our kids as teenagers. And because I had the incredible privilege of being a stay-at-home mom, I did a lot of things at East Middle School and Grand Junction High School. Our kids were very active, played varsity sports, played band, we became a part of their community. And that community made us a part of their friends and their people they went to school with community. And yeah, it had its ups and downs, you know. Your kids do things, that's how they learn. We were laughing the other day when our youngest daughter has a boyfriend that she's been dating for about 4 to 5 months, and he's in the Marines. And he just graduated from his training, and she was talking to him, and we just were laughing because she was telling him that, you know, how she'd gotten in trouble and she got grounded. And of course, he wanted to know why.
What'd you do?
You know, we told him why, you know, and she laughs about it now. But during that time, I mean, those are the things that you have to be ready to deal with. And yet, above all else, your kids still have to know that your marriage is a priority, even when they're teenagers. The fourth season that we are in is winter, and usually they call that the empty nest. And we would stand up and tell you that we love the empty nest. It's, you know, but I will tell you, statistically right now, this season of life, we are finding a majority of these people divorcing each other. And you would think that after you spent 20 or more years together, that why would you do this? And what we're finding is they're doing it because they've invested their whole life into their kids.
Or into their jobs or something
Whatever.
else if they didn't have
and
children.
They've neglected their marriage. And now they look at each other and go, ooh, I don't want to do life with you. I don't want to have to know you all over again. I don't know who you are. You know, I don't like what I see. And so it's easier for them. They're choosing to walk away from that. And
one of the things we really have to stress there is that you want to have a strong relationship with your spouse before you ever hit that winter season. That it's that summer season and that autumn season that's when you're going to build a solid relationship that's going to get you through the long winter months, if you want to use an example.
And what's really fun is Les and I love spending time together. I mean, for us, it's exciting. Our kids come visit, you know, and that's great. You know, we go to dinner, all those different things. But we just love spending time together. Yeah. And it's a time to renew in your romance, all those kind of things. It's a great time. And you know what? Your kids are watching. They live in a world that a majority of the people they know, even kids at our daughter's age who's been married 5 years, know someone's divorced. I mean, it's just the culture that our kids are growing up in. And that's why, you know, we're so passionate about what we do with marriages to make people's marriages last, because I've lived through the yuckiness of divorce. I lived with all the things that I've had to tell my kids. And yet they know, our kids will tell you, there is no doubt in their mind their mom and dad are here together forever. We're not going anywhere. And the security blanket that gives our kids is so amazing, especially when you start seeing other kids come into their lives and you wonder why those kids want to come to your house and hang out with you. That's why, because they don't have it at their house. The world they live in every day is not a world of good, healthy marriages. It's, what we see as good, healthy marriages is on the bottom of the chart. We already talked about, the pressures of breaking up, growing apart over the years. There's a poem that's very graphic that describes this, and it's called The Wall. Their wedding picture mocked them from the table. These two whose lives no longer touched each other. They loved with such a heavy barricade between them that neither battering ram of words nor artilleries of touch could break it down. Somewhere between the oldest child's first tooth and the youngest daughter's graduation, they lost each other. Throughout the years, each slowly unraveled that tangled ball of string called self. And as they tugged at stubborn knots, each hid their searching from the other. Sometimes she cried at night and begged the whispering darkness to tell her who she was, while he laid beside her snoring like a hibernating bear unaware of her winter. And once after they had made love, he wanted to tell her how afraid he was of dying. But fearing to show his naked soul, he spoke instead about the beauty of her breasts. She took a course in modern art, trying to find herself in colors splashed upon a canvas, and complaining to other women about men who were so insensitive. He climbed into a tomb called his office, and wrapped his mind into a shroud of paper figures, and buried himself in his customers. And slowly the wall between them rose cemented by the mortar of indifference. One day, reaching out to touch each other, they found a barrier they could not penetrate. And recoiling from the coldness of the stone, each retreated from the stranger on the other side. For when love dies, it is not in a moment of an angry battle, nor when fiery bodies lose their heat. It lies panting, exhausted, expiring at the bottom of a wall it could no longer scale. What a sad story. But you know what, guys? Every one of you knows someone with this story. There's no doubt in my mind. And it may not just be one. It may be many couples that you know like this. And we would just encourage you. Indifference is one of the biggest issues that will get you to the issue of growing apart. When you just become indifferent and you just go on living life. It doesn't matter anymore. So, we live in a society today that has a throwaway mentality. So what? Get a new one. And it's like, oh man, we can't do that with our marriages. It's not what God would want us to do. And, that we have an obligation when we stand up before God and make a covenant with Him that says we're going to do this for the rest of our life. That we really mean what we say, and we're going to do this for the rest of our life. Many today know how to work at a relationship. But the bad part about it is some of us have defective models. All of us can go back, I'm sure, and think about things in our parents' lives that, we can learn from and not do as a repeat. People, when their marriages break up, the pain that comes is incredible. I just remember listening to stories of my kids, their friends, and it's just heartbreaking to me. So, if I was to try to separate two pieces of this card, I can't do it without damaging both of us. No matter how I do this, it's going to come apart. And so, when marriages fail and people divorce, people get hurt. Parts of their lives both are ripped. Because we took what we said was one, and it's no longer that way. The actor Michael Caine spoke about the breakup of his first marriage to his wife, Patricia. If I'd have known the anguish involved, I would have stayed at all costs. If I'd been as strong as Pat, I think we could have made it. Some people think it's a matter of luck, marriage work, but it's not. The agony Aunt Claire Rayner said about her marriage to her husband, Desmond. We've been married 43 years this year. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't luck. The harder you work at your marriage, the luckier you get. We have become a couple, not two individuals. We have fun together, more fun than we have apart. She says, I still fancy him, and I thank God that he still fancies me.
So a couple of questions that we like to ask are, what does it take to work in a marriage, and how do we grow together? Because those are two of the things that we have that we know that we really need to do. And every marriage needs to be worked at. Teresa and I have to work at our marriage often. In fact, usually we speak quite a bit. We speak at Relationship Builders, and we speak here, and we speak a lot on marriages. And typically one of the things that happens, usually the day before we speak, is there's some big thing that happens. I mean, there's usually a fight that we have, or the whole week could be terrible, whatever it was. This week, I kept, in fact, I was talking to my men's accountability group yesterday, and I'm like, yeah, Teresa and I are speaking tomorrow. I said, I know we're just going to have some huge blow up tonight. I said, I just know it's going to happen. So, but it didn't happen this week. So, it was
And I'm getting better at learning
unusual.
if I stay here at work longer, then maybe it won't happen.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it has to do with, since our kitchen's been in this state of disrepair, we eat out all the time. So anyway, but every marriage needs to be worked at. And if your marriage is in a state of disrepair, it can be restored. And trust, we know. I mean, all of the, so many of the couples that'll be helping us out over the next several weeks, they know what it's going to take. So if that's where you're finding yourself as a couple, then it's our prayer that this course will begin to help you get where you need to be and help provide you with the tools that you need to use in there. We've got a little graphic to show you